Okay, so here we are with exploring modular synths, and this is going to be a very basic introductory video, although we are going to get into a nice little patch. The first synthesizers were actually modular synths, not the kinds of things, the keyboards that we typically think of as synthesizers now. So we've seen a resurgence in modular synths now, and it's going back to that early format. So what we see here, each one of these are different modules that are made by different companies. And these modules then need to be assembled in a case and put together. And so here we have the case, and they're basically just dropped in and screwed in. And there are power cables in the back that connect it to the power supply. So you need a case, you need a power supply, and really that's all you need, because the modules themselves come with little cables to connect them to the power supply, which you can't see, it's under here. And that's how you go. But you need a couple modules to get started with. One module on its own isn't going to do anything. So what we're going to do is go through a basic patch. And the great thing about modular synths is that you can choose any module that you want. There are dozens of modular makers, if not more, and there are hundreds of modules, if not maybe thousands at this point. But each maker might make 10, 20, 30 modules. And there are dozens of major makers out there making great modules. So you assemble it yourself, and what that allows you to do is it allows you to create any kind of synthesizer that you want. So if you want to have 4 voices, 8 voices, 15 voices, you can do that. If you want to have 1 sequencer, no sequencers, 6 sequencers, you can do that. If you want to have 5 delays, you can do that. But the real power of modular synths is that you can route the synth any way that you want, and you have full control over how you route it, how you patch it together, and how you control each aspect of the patch. And so we're going to explore that in this video. Now, when you put in the modules, they're not connected in any way except to the power supply, but they're not connected to each other in any way. So you can't just turn something here and expect something to come out. Nothing's going to come out until you patch it. Nothing's connected. All connections have to be patched. And that's a great advantage in that it gives you incredible control. It's a disadvantage in the sense that once you remove a patch, you've lost everything that you've created, and you've got to start from scratch each time. So every time you do a patch, it's kind of a new exploration. It's an experiment. You never know exactly what you're going to find. Now, the first synthesizers were analog. Later, digital synthesizers came along. At the heart of every modular synth, it's really an analog system. Although some modules contain digital components for control, the essential components are analog. And they're passed from module to module with patch cables like this. And what we do is we connect a patch cable from one module to another, and it sends a signal which is in the form of either an audio signal, so what we think of as sound or music, or just a control voltage. So a voltage that can control some other parameter, and we're going to explore that. So every signal that's passing through the modular system is an audio signal or it's a control voltage. And the control voltage is a voltage that can vary, and based on how it varies, it can do different things like control pitch. It can be in the form of a fast pulse that would control tempo or move a sequencer, or can do all sorts of other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at first, how do you actually make a sound? So what you need to make a sound is you need a sound source. You need a module that makes sounds. You might think that every module would make a sound, but that's not true. Most of the modules actually don't make any sound by themselves. They're used to shape that sound or control that sound. So generally, the simplest way to make a sound is to have what's called an oscillator. An oscillator is a module that creates a waveform in the audible frequency, which would be from around 20 to 30 hertz on the low end. A hertz is a cycle per second, so 20 to 30 cycles per second, up to about 20 kilohertz, which would be 20,000 cycles per second. And we hear that as pitch. That's the audible range. We can create sine waves or other types of waves that are slower than that, and we can use those, they're very useful, but we can't actually hear them. So we use them to control other sounds that we can actually hear. So we're going to start with this module right here. This is an oscillator, and therefore it's a sound source. Oscillators are generally called VCOs in the world of modular, which means voltage controlled oscillator. So it's an oscillator that generates a sound, and it can be controlled through control voltage that we feed into it. So let's take the output of this module. It has 6 outputs on the bottom, which are different types of waveforms, and we're going to listen to each one of those. So we're going to take the first output of the sine wave, which is our most basic wave. It's sinusoidal, up and down. You've all seen it in school. We're going to take that output, and we're going to plug it into our output. I'm going to put it into clouds, but clouds is, the blend is all the way down, so it's not active, and it's just going to my output. So when we do that, we hear that sine wave. And that's a basic sine wave. It's pretty boring, but it's useful. Now, the difference between different waves is the harmonics they generate. And you can look this up. I don't have time to explain it all here, but I'm just going to let you hear what it sounds like. We have 6 outputs in the Dixie, which is great. Sine is the first, the second is triangle. And here it's got kind of richer harmonic content. The third is a kind of zigzag wave. It's got very rich in harmonic content. Then we've got a saw wave. Then we've got a pulse wave. Pulse wave is a kind of square wave, but the square, the size of the square can be changed. And the Dixie actually has a knob for changing that pulse width. So it changes the size of that pulse, and I'll let you hear what that sounds like. And the size of the pulse width is actually something that we could send control voltage into the Dixie, because it's got a pulse wave modulation input. And what that would do, it would be slowly move that knob without us having to move it, and give that nice fat sound. The Dixie also has a sub output, which gives an output, a square wave, an octave below. So you can hear that really nice fat sound. So what we need to do is send a control voltage into the Dixie that's going to change the pitch. And for that, we use an input on the Dixie that says 1V/OCT. That stands for 1 volt per octave. And that's the scaling, that refers to the scaling of the control voltage. So as the voltage that's coming in goes up slightly, the pitch goes up in a corresponding amount. So if we sent control voltage to the Dixie and then varied that control voltage, we'd get different pitches. So for that, what we need to do is take another patch cable, and we could use a lot of different modules here to send different control voltages to the Dixie. In fact, almost every module here could send something to the Dixie that would affect its pitch. And that's the nice thing about modular, is that anything that generates a control voltage could be used to control the pitch of the Dixie. So it's almost like all the modules speak one language, and that's basically the language of voltage. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this module called pressure points. And this has 4 pads. And the pads send out control voltage according to where the knobs are. And there are 3 outputs for each pad and 3 knobs for each pad. So if I play this first one, it's sending out what this knob is, a voltage according to this knob. So these are both down all the way. This one's up slightly. It's sending that voltage out to the corresponding output here. So this row of knobs goes to this output, and this column of knobs goes with this pad. So let's take the top row. We've got an output here. So that's going to send out control voltage according to these knobs. We're going to put it into the 1 volt per octave of the Dixie. I'm going to turn the Dixie back on. Now, That's just playing, but I've just turned the sound off so that you can hear me. Now, this knob is controlling the pitch there, so you'll notice as I turn this knob up, the pitch is going to go up. Now, if I advance it, since I have these knobs set higher, it's going to send a different control voltage when it reaches the second pad, and a different one when it reaches the third pad, and you're going to see the pitch change. Okay, so now we're able to play the oscillator, but you notice that the sound is continuously always running, so it doesn't sound that musical. It's just constantly blaring out a sound, even when we're not playing a note. And that's because the oscillator just constantly generates this sound. So what we need to do is have a way of opening and closing the sound, the amplitude of the sound, which means the volume. And for that we use what's called an envelope generator. And every sound has an onset, which is called the attack. It then fades off from the initial volume of the attack, which is called decay. It then sustains at a certain volume, and then it fades away, which is called the release. And so that kind of attack, decay, sustain, release is called the envelope of the sound. Now to do that, we use what's called a voltage-controlled amplifier or voltage-controlled attenuator, a VCA. And what that does is it allows us to shape the amplitude of the sound. Now I'm going to use a special kind of VCA called the Optimix. It's not really exactly a VCA, but it operates like one for all intents and purposes. So we're going to use that. I'm going to take the output of the Dixie, instead of going straight out, I'm going to put it into the input of the Optimix, and then take the output of the Optimix out. Now that by itself isn't going to change anything. But what I can do is I can control the opening and closing of the Optimix's gate to allow the sound in only when it receives a signal that tells it to open that gate. So what I need to do that is I need to have the output of the pressure points send a signal that opens and closes the gate. And so if we do that, it's going to sound like this. So I've got a gate output. Now this sends a gate every time I press one of the keys. That's what it does here. And this is actually in Brains, which is an add-on module to Pressure Point, makes Pressure Points a lot more useful. And the gate is basically, it's actually also a waveform that goes high and then comes back down. It sends a control voltage and then comes back down. And what it does is when that gate is high, it opens the VCA, the voltage controlled amplifier, and allows the sound to come through. So when I turn my monitors back up, now you're hearing no sound. And that's because this has been plugged into the control of the gate. So it's only going to allow sound to come through when I press something. So let's see if it works. Now if I hold down pressure points, it's going to keep the gate open. But when I let go, nothing comes in. So when the first modular synthesizers were connected finally to keyboards by the Moog company, this is now what we think of, what many people think of as a synthesizer. You've got a keyboard, it only makes a sound when you press the key, and it keeps that sound going as long as you press the key. But you can see actually there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes into making a keyboard synthesizer be able to do that. you've got to have the oscillator, you've got to have this control keys, you've got to have the gate, opening and closing, and the VCA, the voltage controlled amplifier. So that's basically how a keyboard synthesizer would work. Now, this type of opening and closing the gate still isn't that interesting. It's not that musical. So there's something we can do to make it a little bit better, and that's use an envelope generator, which allows us to change the shape of that envelope that we were talking about. So I'm going to use peaks to do that. Peaks can do a lot of different things. One of the things it can do is be an envelope generator. So instead of this gate going directly to the voltage controlled amplifier or the Optimix, which is operating in that way, I'm going to have it go into peaks, which is our envelope generator. So the gate is being sent out to trigger peaks, and peaks has these four knobs here that allows us to shape the attack, decay, sustain, and release of that envelope. So let's see if we can get that to work. So if I have the attack quite low, that's a fast attack, fast decay, medium sustain and release. The last one is release. So that's how the sound fades away. As I increase that, you can see the sound will last longer. So if I have it really long, it takes a long time for that sound to release. If I make it faster, so now we're getting more musical shapes. Now I can also increase the decay. And I could increase the attack, that's the onset of it. So you hear how the sound takes a while now to reach maximum amplitude. That's the attack. I can make the attack really slow, and then when I press the pressure points, you wouldn't even hear the sound in the beginning. It would take a while for it to come in. If I make the attack really slow, make the decay a little longer also. Now we're getting a lot more musical kind of effects, right? We're getting dynamics now, changes in volume. Okay. So now there's another interesting thing that we can do, which is right now playing each one of these individually. What I can do is I can automate this process so that the modular moves along the notes by itself. And what I do for that is I use a clock source. So clocks are another type of module that allow us to sequence and allow us to have kind of timed pulses. So we're going to use Pamela's workout. This sends out triggers. It's got 8 outputs, so you can send out 8 triggers of different rhythms. We're just going to take one there. We're going to start it, and now you can see that it is blinking as it's sending out those. And we're going to put those triggers, and again, they're just voltage pulses. And we're going to send it into the clock input of brains, which is going to advance pressure points automatically. Okay, so now I have pressure points automated, running on its own, but we're not hearing anything because the envelope is only being triggered when I press something. So if I want to automate that, I can use another one of pressure point's outputs, which is the second or third one. I'm going to use the third one. And what I can do is, that's going to send out a different control voltage according to where these knobs are. Remember, the top one's controlling pitch. So we can use this one to control the envelope being triggered. So if I plug it here, first I'll put them all down so they're not sending the trigger yet. Now as I turn one of these up, when the step reaches there, it's going to send out a control voltage that's going to open the envelope. So only the first one's up right now. Now let's open up the third one. Let's turn up the speed. We'll actually use a different, faster output from... So they're all coming out now. Now I'm changing the pitches. Got a nice little sequence going here. So one of the things that modular synthesizers really love, or any kind of synthesizer, is delay and reverb. It really brings out the sound a lot. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this sequence that we have here, and we're going to plug it into a delay module, which is the Echophon here. And we're going to hear what that sounds like. So we've got the output coming from the Optimix into the Echophon, and that output coming out here. And we're gonna, this is the sequence. We're going to bring in the delay. right, so that's the first little patch. I hope you enjoyed it.